Hey everybody, I'm here in the Ducati showroom today to talk to you about the new V4 Multistrada. This is the old guy, so let's just start with the old one. This review I did a couple of years ago and I really loved the bike. It was fantastic. We put in 400 miles on this thing over in France. Really loved it, and Ducati went one better on this. The new Multistrada V4S. So we've gone from what was 150-ish horsepower and 95 foot-pounds of torque to what is now 170 horsepower and about 91, 92 foot-pounds of torque. Traded a little torque for a lot more horsepower and more gadgetry. So let me show you some of the stuff that we've got going on here. This is the most exciting feature on the bike for me. So this is the front radar assembly. So that is going to scan the road in front of you. We've also got one on the back, right here, below the light. Way cool. And working in conjunction with that, we have these warning lights on the mirrors on both sides. There's just a little yellow light that lights up on each mirror to let you know that the rear-facing radar has picked up a vehicle and warn you about it. So the radar allows you to work with adaptive cruise control, set your cruising distance from traffic, and it reacts when you don't. It's optional, and at this point in North America, it won't come on the bike activated because it still hasn't cleared with the government agencies. Well, let me show you the dash display on this thing. If I turn and hold, much improved display. It's bigger, it's sharper, clearer. You can read the small lettering better here. I know I had troubles with that on the 1260, but not this one.
This display is made by Bosch, which also makes the ones for BMW, so you can see it has similar quality of detail here. And if you ever lose your key, they have it so that you can enter a PIN code that you set up beforehand, and then you can start your bike, although you won't be able to get into your luggage, unfortunately. When it comes to navigation and multimedia, Ducati decided not to go with CarPlay or the Android equivalent. Instead, they just made their own hybrid app. But the problem is that you have to run a second app called Sidekick for your navigation needs, and the two apps run at the same time on your phone, which is a little weird, and you can't let your phone fall asleep. So you have to plug it into the USB port to keep it alive. The problem with doing that was that it would confuse the Ducati Connect app and you would end up with the system not working at all. So I think Ducati needs to do some work on this. And that is, of course, assuming you can get your phone into the waterproof compartment easily.
Right here is a nice little cell phone compartment. And you've got the USB port in there that you can just plug your phone in. Problem that I find is it's really tight. Like this is an iPhone 8 and it's in there, but getting it out with the case is a little labor intensive. And actually with my iPhone 11 Pro Max, it's really tight with the case on it. I suppose you wouldn't need one if you just put the phone in here. I just think they could have made it a little bit wider. This also needs real convincing to sit down. You can also notice something that I complained about on the 1260 was that the switches, they were outlined in light, but the lettering was not. Now on this model, you can see everything is lit up, and I love that. So now if you're even a little unfamiliar or not sure what you're pushing, it's labeled and you can read it in the dark. This is a neat adaptation that they brought to the new V4. I do find it a little on the plasticky side, just like Zach Kortz mentioned in his Revzilla review. I notice on this one here that this rattles around. If you're going down the road listening to that, that won't be acceptable. But I do love the ease of operation there. The rear luggage or pannier mounts, see the front ones are solid as you would expect. The rear ones actually can pivot.
They do this so that when you're leaning into a turn, the weight of the luggage can sway slightly and help the motorcycle turn better, the same way you would with a passenger leaning. Seeing this makes me wonder if twerking is really popular in Italy.
Look right here. we've got some vents, and they aren't just for appearance. They actually channel down to intakes on the front. See, we got one over here as well. So you've got air coming in here, exiting a little bit up in here and behind. Got intake here, exiting here. We've got air drawn in the front through the radiator and purposely blown out to the side. And we've got these scoops down here pulling cool air and channeling it up and out at the rider. I've also got another one here. Not sure where that's getting air from, but I think what I'm gonna find when I ride this is it's gonna be very quiet. Like all these little vents and stuff to bring air in is going to cut down on the turbulent air. At least that's what I would guess. I haven't ridden it yet. Something I wanted to talk about was the seat height. So I'm only 5'8", and in fact I'm a little bit under 5'8", and this seat is two position. You can go low or high. I've got it in the low position, and I can't touch both feet, not even tiptoes. I could on the old model, but that's because the seat is much narrower. So this is something, there is a lower seat available, but I'm thinking I would have my seat customized to carve out more of a tapered front section. So if you're short, this one's going to seem kind of tall. It does feel a lot bigger right here than the 1260 does. It is. There's definitely more mass up here because they've mounted the radiator in two sections on each side here now. It is a bigger bike, but strangely enough, it weighs basically the same. The engine has gotten shorter because it's not a big stroker V2. It's a squat V4, but it's not really much wider than the old engine. Like the clutch cover and stator cover don't stick out a lot more on the engine. What else? Standard heated seat, front and rear. Here's the passenger's switches for warm or really warm. It is a wider seat, as I mentioned, than the old one. Overall, the bike feels the same coming off the kickstand though. I think it's going to feel much the same, just maybe a little bigger. I think that it's not going to be as good in the corners with the 19-inch front wheel versus the 17-inch front wheel. But overall, I think it's going to be a lot more fun to ride. Tubeless tires with the spokes coming to the edges. Got the Brembo Stylema top of the line brakes. Got electronic semi-active suspension front and rear. Like, what more do you want? I guess the answer would be I would want crash bars right here, because if you drop this one, if you venture off-road, it's gonna hurt. Model with the radar and stuff, it's going to be about 27 grand Canadian with the spoked wheels, and there's all kinds of different pricing available. It ranges. It's not cheap, but which Ducati is, right? This is Miles, and I'm at Blackfoot Motorsports today. If you're coming to Blackfoot to look at Ducatis, Miles is the person to talk to. He's their brand champion. He's been selling them for a while. And the reason I've got him in on this discussion is this new engine completely changes the way Ducati ownership is for a Multistrada anyway. The Gran Turismo is way different than the 1260 Testastrada. Ducati has gone out of their way with this motorcycle to, in their words, break down the barrier of ownership, the cost of maintenance.
Ducati has always used, well, not always, but for the vast majority of their life cycle has been using desmodromically actuated valve train. They're great at high speed, high RPMs. The downside is that it's a little bit harder on the components, so service intervals are tighter. Using what they've figured out in terms of stretching intervals on the desmodromic valve train, in terms of materials and processes, by going to a spring valve train, they've now been able to effectively double the major service. So 60,000 kilometers versus 30,000 kilometers for your major service. So you're doing it half as often. Another advantage is that they've also been able to stretch the oil change interval from being a 15,000 kilometer or 12-month service to a 15,000 kilometer or 2-year service. So you can virtually look at your services half as often. And that's really what they are banking on for this bike being a great seller, because yeah, it is breaking down that final barrier that people have to purchasing a Ducati. Sure, they're great bikes, they look beautiful, they handle beautiful, and they're expensive to purchase. I would say that over the past 8 years since the Audi group initially took over Ducati, that's been a tremendous focus of the brand, is breaking down that trust reliability barrier.
By their own admission, they went from being the most expensive bike in this class in the 1260 to the top 2 or 3 in the cost of maintaining it. So I mean, that is just huge.
If you eliminate the fact that you have to change chain and sprockets every so often versus the shaft drive bikes out there, this is the lowest cost of ownership adventure bike.
This really is the apex predator now in the class. Like, it is really going to be awesome, and I can't wait. Once the weather clears up, we look for an opportunity to ride it.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly won't get any arguments from me, Jim.
Yeah.
It's going to be a beaut.
I should clarify that what you just heard Miles and I talking about are Ducati claims from a study they did with competitor motorcycles, and it's not independently verified yet.
I think some people, and especially people who like the old 1260S, they have some complaints about the look. Like, you've got a different color on the engine here, you got a silver panel here, and you got a red highlight here. It's a little too much for some people. I see what you're talking about.
But I wouldn't go so far to say that it looks like it was a parts bin special the way some people have. But I get it. It's nearly a $30,000 motorcycle, and really it should be perfect. Ducati has that reputation that the style and panache is always going to be there. Looking at it from all the other sides, I still like it. Looks aside, I think it would be a good idea to get the extended warranty on this motorcycle since it's the first year of the Gran Turismo. If you're in Europe, you're going to get an automatic 4-year warranty. How lucky are you? A few last observations. The air filters for the engines are often under the gas tanks of adventure bikes, and the Multistrada V4S is no different, so it's going to take a while to get to. Luckily, you only need one tool to pull the tank off. Unfortunately, there was no room under the seat to put it where it would be much easier to access. As you can see from this photo, it's full. But one really nice thing is that they include a tire repair kit under the back seat, including compressed air, plugs, and everything. Ducati says this is the best motorcycle they've ever made, and I can't argue with that. It might be. It looks very solid and like one that I would enjoy riding on the road a lot. As always, I've tried to give you the facts and observations as best I can, and it's up to you to decide if it's a hit or a miss.